The massive chamber on Nexus Prime hummed with nervous energy as representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered for an emergency session. Commander Michael Stone adjusted his uniform and checked his notes one final time. After 30 years of service to the Galactic Federation, he had never seen the council members look so frightened. The air felt heavy with tension as Chancellor Veltar called the session to order. His crystalline features reflected the blue light from the central holographic display, where strategic maps showed the dark edges of known space. Beyond those boundaries, something ancient had returned. The Vorthan Empire has made contact, the Chancellor announced, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. After 1,000 years in exile, they have returned to claim what they call their rightful place in the galaxy. Stone leaned forward, studying the faces around him. The insectoid hive minds clicked their mandibles nervously. The aquatic Kalari delegation whispered among themselves through their breathing apparatus. Even the usually calm Silicon Brotherhood showed signs of agitation, their metallic bodies shifting restlessly. "What are their demands?" asked Ambassador Thren of the Aquarian Collective, her blue skin pale with worry. Chancellor Veltar paused, his eyes finding the human delegation. "They demand the immediate expulsion of humanity from the Federation. They claim that humans are a dangerous influence that must be removed before they will consider any peace negotiations." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Stone felt his blood run cold. Captain James Mitchell, seated beside him, gripped the armrest of his chair until his knuckles turned white. "This is absurd." Stone stood up, his voice cutting through the noise. "Humanity has been a loyal member of this Federation for 3 decades. We have shared our medical technology freely, helped terraform dozens of worlds, and fought alongside you against pirates and raiders. Our contributions to the common defense are well documented." "We know your record, Commander Stone," replied Chancellor Veltar sadly. "But the Vorthans have made their position clear. They possess technology far beyond anything we have ever encountered. Their fleet numbers in the thousands, each ship capable of destroying entire planets. They have given us 72 hours to comply with their demands, or they will begin systematic destruction of Federation worlds." Stone looked around the chamber, searching for support among the species humanity had helped and befriended over the years. The Kalari had been close allies, their homeworld saved by human medical intervention during the Plague years. The Silicon Brotherhood had exchanged technology freely with human engineers. Even the mysterious hive minds had worked with human scientists on joint research projects. But now those same allies refused to meet his gaze. Fear had replaced friendship in their eyes. "Surely there must be another way," Stone pleaded. "We can negotiate, find common ground. Humanity has never been aggressive toward the Vorthans. We have never even encountered them before today. The Vorthans remember humanity from the old records," Chancellor Veltar explained. "They claim humans are too unpredictable, too dangerous to be allowed to develop further. They say your species has the potential to become a threat to galactic stability." Mitchell whispered urgently in Stone's ear. "Sir, we are receiving reports that Federation forces are already moving toward our colonies. They are not waiting for the vote." Stone felt a chill run down his spine. Around the chamber, delegates were already preparing their voting devices. The debate that should have taken days was being rushed through in hours. Fear was making decisions now, not wisdom. "I call for an immediate vote," announced Chancellor Veltar. "All in favor of Resolution 2847, the emergency expulsion of humanity from the Galactic Federation, please register your vote now." One by one the votes appeared on the main display. Green lights for approval, red lights for denial. Stone watched in growing horror as green light after green light illuminated the board. The Kalari delegation voted yes. The Silicon Brotherhood voted yes. Even species that humanity had personally rescued from natural disasters voted to abandon their former allies. The final tally was devastating. 237 votes in favor of expulsion. 0 votes against. 0 abstentions. The human delegation had not been permitted to vote on their own fate. "The motion passes unanimously," Chancellor Veltar announced, his voice heavy with regret. "Humanity has 72 hours to evacuate all Federation space. All human assets, colonies, and trade agreements are hereby terminated effective immediately." Stone stood in stunned silence as the chamber began to empty. Delegates who had shared meals with him, worked on joint projects, even called him friend, now hurried past without acknowledgement. 30 years of cooperation, friendship, and mutual aid had been erased in a single vote. "Commander," Mitchell said quietly, "we need to leave. Security forces are already moving to escort us from the station." Stone gathered his papers slowly, his hands shaking slightly. As they walked through corridors that had once welcomed human footsteps, he could not help but notice how empty they seemed. The Federation had chosen survival over honor, fear over friendship. "Send word to all human colonies," Stone instructed as they boarded their transport. "Full evacuation procedures are now in effect. We are going home." As their ship departed Nexus Prime for the last time, Stone looked back at the massive station that had been humanity's gateway to the galaxy. They had come in friendship and were leaving in betrayal. But they were leaving with their dignity intact. The stars seemed colder now, but they still shone with promise. Somewhere out there, humanity would make their stand. Admiral Robert Thompson stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching red dots spread across the tactical display like drops of blood. Each dot represented a Vorthan battle group heading toward a human world. His fingers drummed against the command console as reports flooded in from across human space. "New Britannia is under heavy attack," reported Lieutenant Emma Davis from her communications station. "They are requesting immediate evacuation support for their civilian population." "Epsilon Colony has stopped responding to our calls," added Commander William Brooks, his face grim. "Last message said Vorthan ground forces had landed near the main city." Thompson closed his eyes for a moment. 23 human colonies housed over 40 million people. His fleet had maybe 200 ships, most of them converted cargo vessels and outdated patrol boats. The Vorthans brought thousands of warships, each one more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. The worst part was the betrayal. The Federation had not just abandoned humanity. They had handed over detailed star charts showing every human settlement, every trade route, every defensive position. Former allies had gift-wrapped humanity for slaughter. "Sir, we have Dr. Elizabeth Turner on Emergency Channel 7, called Captain Susan Wright. She is refusing to evacuate Research Station Omega." Thompson activated the holographic display. Dr. Turner appeared, her gray hair messy from working without sleep. Behind her, the research station's laboratory buzzed with activity. Scientists moved frantically between computer terminals and experimental equipment. "Doctor, you must evacuate immediately. Vorthan forces will reach your sector in less than 6 hours." Turner shook her head firmly. "Admiral, my team has discovered something important about Vorthan shield technology. We think we can find a weakness, but we need more time to test our theories. I cannot protect your station for 12 minutes, let alone 12 hours. "Then do not try," Turner replied calmly. "But if we abandon this research now, how many more humans will die? Our people need every advantage we can get against these monsters." Thompson stared at her determined face. He recognized that look. It was the same stubborn courage he had seen in human faces throughout this crisis. "Very well, Doctor. You have your 12 hours. May God help us all." As he ended the transmission, Thompson thought about the reports coming in from across human space. On New Manchester, factory workers stayed at their jobs making ammunition until Vorthan ships appeared in orbit. On Terra Nova, teachers continued holding classes in underground bunkers, refusing to let fear stop their children's education. Lieutenant Peter Harrison guided his fighter through the wreckage of what used to be the merchant ship Lucky Strike. His squadron of 6 fighters faced a Vorthan battle cruiser the size of a small moon. The mathematics were simple. They could not win. But they could make the enemy pay a price. "This is Falcon Squadron," Harrison broadcast on all frequencies. "We will hold this position, whatever the cost." His fighters dove toward the massive enemy ship like angry insects attacking a giant. Their weapons barely scratched the Vorthan shields, but they kept attacking anyway. Every second they delayed the enemy gave civilian transports more time to escape. On the surface of New Geneva Colony, Captain Mary Johnson led her ground forces in a fighting retreat through the burning streets. Vorthan soldiers advanced with weapons that turned buildings to ash, but the humans made them fight for every block. "Fall back to Checkpoint 7, Johnson ordered over her radio. "Make them work for it." Her soldiers moved from building to building, setting traps and ambushes. They could not stop the Vorthan advance, but they could slow it down. Behind them, the last civilian shuttles lifted off towards safety. Dr. Turner worked frantically in her laboratory as Vorthan ships approached. Her team had discovered that human brain patterns affected Vorthan technology differently than expected. Instead of simple energy flow, they created strange resonance effects that could overload alien systems. "If we can create a focused pulse at the right frequency," she explained to her assistant while enemy fire shook the station, "we might be able to disable their weapons completely." "Doctor, they are demanding our surrender," her assistant said nervously. "Tell them we are busy," Turner replied, adjusting her equipment. Science waits for no one. Across human space, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Civilians turned soldiers. Scientists became warriors. Teachers became heroes. The Vorthan Empire had expected humanity to break under pressure, to surrender when faced with impossible odds. Instead, they found a species that grew stronger when cornered. Every defeat made humans more determined. Every loss made them fight harder. Admiral Thompson received reports of these small victories amid the larger defeats. Humanity was losing the war, but they were winning something more important. They were proving that some things mattered more than survival. "Sir," reported Commander Brooks, "we are receiving encrypted messages from several Federation species. Some are privately questioning the decision to abandon us." Thompson nodded slowly. "Keep monitoring those channels. Maybe our example will remind them what honor means." As night fell over human space, the Vorthans learned their first hard lesson about humanity. This species did not break easily. They did not surrender when faced with superior force. They fought with a determination that bordered on madness. Lieutenant Harrison's squadron was finally destroyed, but not before damaging the Vorthan cruiser badly enough to delay its advance by 6 hours. 6 hours that allowed 3,000 civilians to reach safety. The galaxy was watching. And slowly, it was beginning to understand what it had thrown away. Deep beneath the red surface of Mars, Dr. Helen Clark wiped sweat from her face as she stared at the strange device on her workbench. The underground laboratory hummed with desperate energy as humanity's brightest minds worked around the clock. They had salvaged this piece of technology from a crashed Vorthan fighter, and it was teaching them things that seemed impossible. "Look at this, Richard," she said to her colleague, Dr. Richard Price. "When I connect human neural patterns to their power system, something amazing happens. Instead of just moving energy from one place to another, it creates waves that grow stronger and stronger." Price leaned over her shoulder, his eyes red from weeks without proper sleep. "The Vorthans never discovered this because they think differently than we do. Their minds are too organized, too predictable. But human thoughts are chaotic, creative. We see possibilities they never imagined." Above ground, Captain Mary Johnson crawled through the wreckage of another battlefield. Humanity had lost this fight too, but they had made the Vorthans pay heavily for their victory. More importantly, the enemy had left behind damaged ships and weapons that human engineers could study. "There," she pointed to a partially destroyed Vorthan fighter. "That power core looks undamaged. Davies, Cooper, get it loaded for transport before their recovery teams arrive." Her soldiers worked quickly under the orange Martian sky. They had become scavengers by necessity, picking through the bones of each battle for any technology they could understand. Every piece of alien equipment might hold the key to human survival. The Vorthans had superior numbers and weapons, but they had made one critical mistake. They underestimated human creativity. While other species used technology exactly as it was designed, humans saw every device as something that could be improved, modified, or used in completely new ways. Back on Earth, General David Wilson studied reports from across human space in his underground command center. The news was terrible. 7 more colonies had fallen to Vorthan attacks. Hundreds of thousands of civilians were dead or missing. But buried in the tactical data was something interesting. "Jennifer, look at these response times," he said to his aide, Colonel Jennifer Adams. "Our hit-and-run attacks are working. The Vorthans are becoming more careful, more defensive. They are starting to fear our unpredictability." Adams studied the numbers on her tablet. "Sir, we are also receiving secret messages from Federation space. Some species are privately asking questions about the alliance with the Vorthans. The Kalari High Council has been investigating Vorthan war crimes from their first exile." Wilson allowed himself a small smile. "Humans have always been good at inspiring others to remember their conscience. Keep monitoring those channels. The tide might be turning." In a hidden asteroid base, Commander Thomas Anderson prepared his raiders for another lightning strike against Vorthan supply lines. His ships were a mixture of human engineering and captured alien technology, combined in ways that would make any proper engineer weep. "Remember, we are not trying to win big battles," he told his pilots. "We are teaching them that conquering humanity comes with a price they might not want to pay." His fighters launched into space using Vorthan stealth technology powered by human fusion engines. Their weapons were energy cannons recalibrated for human reflexes and thinking patterns. Each ship was unique, a testament to human ingenuity working with alien science. Dr. Clark made another breakthrough in her Mars laboratory. She had connected 3 different Vorthan power cores to a human computer system, creating something that had never existed before. The hybrid device could predict Vorthan ship movements by analyzing the energy patterns of their engines. "Helen, this is incredible," Price said, watching the display show Vorthan fleet positions in real time. "We can see them coming hours before they arrive. Our ships can be waiting in ambush." "It gets better," Clark replied, adjusting the controls. "I think we can use their own communication systems against them. If we can create the right interference pattern, we might be able to jam their entire fleet at once." The work was dangerous. Several research teams had been killed when their experiments overloaded. But the survivors kept pushing forward, driven by the knowledge that every breakthrough might save human lives. Captain Johnson returned to Mars with another load of salvage technology. Her teams had learned to strip useful components from Vorthan wreckage faster than the enemy could clean up after battles. The aliens were neat, organized, predictable. Humans were chaotic scavengers who saw value in everything. "What did you find this time?" Dr. Clark asked as Johnson's soldiers unloaded their cargo. "Navigation computers, shield generators, and something that might be their version of a medical scanner," Johnson replied. "Plus a lot of smaller components we do not understand yet. We will find uses for all of it," Clark promised. "Humans are very good at making something from nothing." As weeks passed, the underground laboratories on Mars became the heart of humanity's resistance. Scientists worked alongside soldiers, sharing ideas and taking risks that would have terrified more cautious species. They combined human intuition with alien technology, creating weapons and defenses that neither species could have developed alone. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their courage or determination. It was their refusal to accept that anything was impossible. When faced with superior technology, they did not despair. They learned, adapted, and innovated. The Vorthans had expected to crush a primitive species. Instead, they were about to face something far more dangerous. They were about to face human creativity armed with alien science. The evacuation sirens screamed across New Geneva Colony as massive Vorthan ships descended through the orange sky like metal vultures. Captain Alexander Hughes stood at the window of the orbital defense platform, watching civilian transports flee toward the outer system while his small crew prepared for what they all knew would be their final battle. "All civilians are clear of the colony surface," reported Sergeant Patricia Wells, her voice steady despite the impossible situation. "We estimate 40,000 refugees heading to the safety zones in the outer settlements." Hughes nodded, checking his weapon one last time. "What about our defensive capabilities? 12 fighters, 3 patrol boats, and this platform. The enemy has 17 capital ships, each one bigger than our entire base." Wells paused, calculating quickly. "Engineering thinks we can hold them for maybe 20 minutes. Then we hold for 20 minutes, Hughes replied simply. "Every second we delay them gives those families more distance from this hell." This scene was happening on dozens of human worlds. The Vorthans had grown frustrated with humanity's stubborn resistance and changed their strategy. Military targets were no longer enough. They wanted to break human morale by targeting the defenseless, the innocent, the helpless. On Titan Station, Admiral Kevin Thompson coordinated humanity's desperate defense from a command center that shook with each enemy bombardment. His forces were scattered across human space, outnumbered everywhere, running low on ammunition and supplies. But they were not running low on determination. "Sir," called Commander Lisa Parker from the intelligence station, "we are receiving an unusual transmission from the Kalari homeworld. The sender claims to be Ambassador Velsim." Thompson raised an eyebrow. Velsim had been one of the aliens who voted to expel humanity from the Federation. The holographic display activated, showing the Kalari ambassador, but he looked different now. His normally calm features showed obvious distress and shame. "Admiral Thompson," Velsim began, his translated voice heavy with emotion. "I must tell you that new evidence has been discovered about the Vorthans' original exile from our galaxy. They were not banished for simple conquest as they told us. They were cast out for crimes against entire civilizations. Genocide on a scale our galaxy had never seen." Thompson leaned forward in his chair. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because yesterday I watched something that changed everything. Human medical ships, carrying your own wounded refugees, stopped to help Kalari civilians caught in a Vorthan attack. Your people shared their limited medical supplies with us, even though we had betrayed you. Your children went without medicine so that our children could live." Velsim's voice broke slightly. "We have made a terrible mistake, Admiral. We betrayed the wrong species." Similar messages began arriving from across Federation space. The Aquarian Collective sent secret apologies. The Silicon Brotherhood questioned their leaders' decisions. Even some hive mind clusters began broadcasting doubts about the alliance with the Vorthons. But the messages came too late to save the colonies that burned today. New Geneva colony became a funeral pyre as Vorthon weapons turned buildings to ash and metal to vapor. Captain Hughes and his crew fought until their ammunition ran out, then fought with emergency weapons, then fought with their bare hands. They died at their posts, buying 23 minutes for the refugee convoys to escape. General Margaret Foster stood in the ruins of Forward Base Alpha, reading the endless list of the dead on her tablet computer. Hundreds of thousands of names scrolled past. Entire colonies reduced to radioactive craters. Families torn apart by alien weapons. Ma'am, her aide, Colonel Brian Mitchell, approached carefully. We have received another broadcast from the Vorthon Empire. They are demanding Earth's unconditional surrender. They promise to spare human lives if we submit completely to their rule. Foster looked up at the night sky, where the lights of approaching Vorthon fleets grew brighter each day. Soon they would reach humanity's birth world, the heart of human civilization. Send our reply, Colonel. Tell them humanity's answer remains the same. No. The cost of defiance was written in blood across human space. On Harmony Station, Dr. James Crawford continued his medical work even as Vorthon soldiers stormed the hospital. He treated wounded civilians until enemy weapons cut him down at his operating table. On New Birmingham, teacher Sarah Mitchell led her students through underground tunnels as the city burned above them. She sang old Earth songs to keep the children calm, her voice steady even as explosions shook dust from the tunnel ceiling. Lieutenant Commander Robert Hayes piloted the last operational destroyer in the Outer Rim, his ship held together by emergency repairs and stubborn will. He had lost his entire squadron, but he kept fighting because surrender was not in his vocabulary. The galaxy watched these acts of courage and sacrifice with growing unease. Some Federation species began to remember what they had once believed in before fear made their decisions. The Vorthons had promised them safety in exchange for betraying their human allies. But safety built on betrayal felt hollow and shameful. Dr. Elizabeth Turner, working in her hidden laboratory, intercepted Vorthon communications that revealed their true plans. Humanity was just the beginning. Once they finished with the humans, the Vorthons intended to subjugate every species in the Federation, one by one. They played on our fears, she recorded in a message she hoped would reach Federation space. They made us abandon our friends so we would have no allies when they came for us next. As Vorthon fleets gathered for the final assault on Earth, humanity stood alone but unbroken. They had paid a terrible price for their refusal to submit, but they had kept something more valuable than life itself. They had kept their honor. The skies above Earth blazed with the light of 1,000 enemy ships as the massive Vorthon armada approached humanity's birthworld. In the underground command center beneath the ruins of Geneva, Admiral Christopher Moore watched the tactical display with calm acceptance. This was humanity's final stand and everyone knew it. All remaining fleet assets are in position, reported Captain Sandra Williams, her voice steady despite the hopeless situation. 18 ships against their 800. Long-range sensors show more Vorthon reinforcements arriving every hour. Moore studied the faces of his officers around the command table. Young and old, they all wore the same expression of quiet determination. After months of fighting alone, they had learned to find strength in each other. Signal all ships, Moore ordered. Today we show the galaxy what humanity truly stands for. We may not win, but we will be remembered. Above the lunar surface, Commander Michael Davies led the last fighter squadron in what everyone knew would be a suicide charge against the Vorthon vanguard. His 17 remaining pilots flew ships held together with spare parts and hope, but they flew with the fury of a species that had lost everything except their dignity. Remember, we are not trying to win this battle, Davies transmitted to his pilots. We are trying to make sure they never forget us. The Vorthon fleet settled into bombardment formation around Earth, their massive weapons charging for the final blow that would end human resistance forever. But as the first energy beams began to fire, something impossible happened. Space around Earth suddenly exploded with new light as hundreds of ships dropped out of hyperspace. Ships bearing the markings of the Kalari Republic, the Aquarian Collective, the Silicon Brotherhood, and dozens of other Federation species. Admiral, Captain Williams' voice carried wonder and disbelief. We are receiving a transmission from the Kalari flagship. They are requesting permission to join our defensive formation. The holographic display activated, showing Ambassador Velsim, but he was no longer wearing diplomatic robes. Instead, he wore the ceremonial armor of a Kalari war leader. Behind him stood representatives from species across the galaxy. Admiral Moore, Velsim began, his voice strong with conviction. We have come to correct the greatest mistake in galactic history. New evidence proves that the Vorthons were not exiled for conquest, but for crimes against entire civilizations. They destroyed 17 species before we finally stopped them. We chose fear over friendship once before. Today we choose to stand with humanity. More ships continued to arrive. The insectoid hive minds brought their living vessels. The gas giant dwellers contributed their energy weapons. Even the mysterious deep dwellers emerged from their hidden worlds to join the fight. Captain Elizabeth Turner, who had been thought dead after her research station was destroyed, appeared on another communication channel. Her face was scarred, her clothes torn, but her eyes burned with triumph. Admiral, I have been working with resistance cells across Federation space. The archaeological evidence is clear. The Vorthons destroyed 17 species in their first campaign of conquest. They have been planning this return for 1,000 years, and humanity was never their only target. We were just the first step in their plan to enslave the entire galaxy. The Vorthon Empire had expected to face a broken, isolated species making a final desperate stand. Instead, they found themselves confronting a united coalition inspired by humanity's example. The galaxy had rediscovered its conscience. As the battle raged around Earth, something beautiful emerged from the violence. Human medical ships moved through the combat zone, rescuing wounded from all species without asking questions. Engineers shared their hybrid technologies freely with their new allies. Even in the middle of war, humanity held to the principles that had inspired the galaxy to find its courage again. Dr. Helen Clark's resonance weapon was deployed by the Joint Fleet, turning Vorthon technology against itself. Enemy shields collapsed in cascade failures as their own power systems overloaded. The ancient empire that had ruled through fear and terror found itself facing something it had never encountered before: unified courage. The tide of battle turned when the deep dwellers activated weapons that had been sleeping for millions of years. Vorthon dreadnoughts, seemingly invincible, began to break apart as reality itself seemed to reject their presence. Commander Davies and his fighter squadron, reinforced now by pilots from a dozen worlds, pressed their attack against the Vorthon command ship. His modified human fighter, powered by Kalari energy cells and armed with Silicon Brotherhood weapons, punched through enemy defenses that should have been impossible to breach. "This is for every human who died alone," he transmitted as his fighter dove toward the enemy flagship. "This is for every ally who remembered what friendship means." As Vorthon ships began to retreat toward the dark spaces between galaxies, Admiral Moore stood on the observation deck of his battered flagship. Around him, Federation vessels limped through space alongside human ships, all of them damaged but victorious. The cost had been enormous. Millions were dead, entire worlds lay in ruins, and it would take generations to rebuild what had been lost. But something precious had been preserved and restored. Captain Williams approached with a message pad. "Sir, the Kalari squadron leader wants to know if we would be willing to share our ship modification techniques with their engineers." Moore smiled, his first genuine smile in months. "Tell her we would be honored to. It is time to rebuild what we almost lost." Earth turned slowly beneath them, scarred but unbroken. Humanity had stood alone against impossible odds and reminded the galaxy that some things were worth any price. The stars no longer seemed cold and distant. They seemed full of friends.